Hi everyone. We are the group doing the community analysis for transition age youth in San Diego. Transition age youth is defined as the youth between the ages of 16 and 25, depending on the organization. And they are also known as like aging out of the foster system or just being in county. The group consists of Sonia, myself, Elizabeth, Elisa, and Hector. And Hector will go ahead and start us first.
So I'll be starting by talking about the focal community. Next slide, please. According to the 2019 census, San Diego's overall population is approximately 3.3 million. Of that population, there are approximately 2,858 foster youth children. Unfortunately, not all foster kids will be placed into foster homes. Once a foster kid turns 18 and 21 in some cases, they age out and are out to fend for themselves. Next slide, please. This next slide is to help understand a little more about what is aging out of foster care and about the transition age youth process. So when children cannot return home to their families, child welfare systems must move quickly to find them alternative homes. As time goes by, the prospects of landing in safe, loving, permanent homes grows dimmer for the foster youth, and many will simply age out of the system when they turn 18 without a family and without the skills to make it on their own. Now, there's more than 250,000 children that are placed into foster care system in the United States every year. And of those, more than 23,000 children will age out of the US foster care system every year. Next slide, please. There are many negative outcomes from aging out. These are the reasons that we mainly wanted to focus on this population. Now, 1 in 2 foster youth will experience homelessness within 2 years. 20% will be instantly homeless as they have no one to assist them. 25% will have direct effects of PTSD. They lack any preparedness to survive once they're out. 37% will become a high school dropout. Only 6% will receive a 2 or 4-year degree. More than half will be unemployed. 12% will suffer from drug and alcohol problems. 80% of males will be arrested, and 75% of females will become pregnant at a young age. Next slide, please. So this is San Diego County, which is where we're geologically focusing on. As you can see, San Diego is about 4,205 square miles across. Along with this map, I included statistics for the age groups and the population for San Diego. Next slide, please. So these are the population characteristics for our targeted community. We were able to find age ranges from 13 to 26. Along with this, we included race, which you can see includes American Indian, Asian, Black/African American, Hispanic, multiracial, other, Pacific Islander, and white. And then along with this, we included gender identity, such as female, male, transgender male or female, other, or don't know. Next slide, please. And then the last characteristic that we wanted to included sexual orientation, as that might play a role in the experiences they face in and out of foster care. And then we'll be speaking about that a little bit later in the presentation as well. Next slide. So what we did in order to do collaboration with the targeted population, we did interviews with former foster youth, and then we ended up doing our own internet research. Next slide, please. So we wanted to mainly focus on the federal and state guidelines. We want them to be reevaluated in order to be improved to better help the transition from being in foster care to out of it. We believe that county assistance should be increased to age 26 from the age 18 to 21 that it is now. Next, we want the cost of living for California to be taken into consideration for the transition process, because as we know, California is a very expensive place to live. We also believe that these youth need to be educated prior to them leaving. This includes them learning on their rights, health education so they can take care of themselves and avoid issues such as pregnancy, drug and alcohol issues. We also believe that they should get financial education in order for them to maintain a living for themselves, and to learn about the criminal justice system, as we want them to learn what can happen if they happen to make the wrong decision, to kind of keep them away from going that route. And lastly, with the current pandemic, we believe that we should increase the length of the assistance. We believe it should be increased even longer than it is right now, because what's going on currently is kind of out of everyone's control, and even adults who have been able to make something of their lives with assistance are struggling through this time. So it seems only right to give them even more time to prepare for something like going through a pandemic like this. Next slide, please.
All right, so I'll be talking about task 2, locating data and information of our target population, and Elizabeth will also be talking about this. So first, I'd like to, some of the information we found was that when discussing foster youth who are aging out and the transitioning age youth, the state of California has acknowledged that there is a need for extending benefits to successfully transition youth. Therefore, back in 2010, AB 12, Assembly Bill 12, the California Fostering Connections to Success Act was passed, and it took effect January 1st, 2012. This extended Title 4E assistance to eligible child welfare or probation youth to remain in foster care up to the age of 21. AB 12 also created California's Extended Foster Care Program, which then extended benefits such as kin guardianship assistance payments, adoption assistance payments, health insurance, and housing for the youth. In order for the youth to be able to access any of these benefits, they will have to meet certain eligibility requirements. Some of those requirements can be such as having a plan, like going to school, working, both, and they still have to meet with social workers monthly, or they are on parole and probation, they have to meet with their officer as well. Additionally, when discussing currently issues going on, the COVID-19 influence, so the California state governor acknowledges that it would be inhumane to age out our youth. So back in April 2020, he extended eligibility and benefits for the youth who are only typically covered up until 21, but temporarily it's been extended because of COVID-19. And it's also to acknowledge that a lot of teens who have attended higher education during this time have lost their homes and reliable Wi-Fi at school because of dorms closing and campuses closing. So what this has done is just further increase that homelessness statistics for the former foster youth. So when collecting data, there were 4 different sources where we got all the information from. They all focused on transitioning age youth, which their age ranges from like 16 to 25, depending on the organization. The first one is Voice of Youth Count, which is just a study program that looked into youth homelessness and unstable housing. Their reportings are from 2016 to 2017. The County of San Diego Behavioral Health Services looked into behavioral health needs of transitioning age youth, and their reportings are also from 2016 and 2017. The California Child Welfare Indicator Project is a collaboration between UC Berkeley and California Department of Social Services that reported on foster care data, and their reportings are from 2010 all the way to 2020, so they are more current. And then additionally, there's kids data, which also provides data on children in California, and their data is current and they're part of a Population Reference Bureau program. So the CCWIP, they reported on the amount of children in foster care in the County of San Diego. As of October 1st, 2020, the total number of youth in foster care overall is 2,448. The total amount of transition age youth between the ages of 16 and 21 is 573, which is still a fairly large number considering that after the age of 21, they will no longer receive services from the county. And then in 2016, and there was 694 transition age youth, and in 2017, there were 581 transition age youth as well. So the CCWIP also collected data on the reasons for case closure. And it's important to note that some of the reasons are age/emancipation, exceeded time limits, and eligibility for re-entry into the foster care system. For age and emancipation, there were 187 youth in 2016 and 2017 who had their case closed. In 2019 and 2020, there was 62, and I think this has to do with COVID and the extension of benefits and services for foster care youth. And for the youth who exceeded their time limit, there were 122 cases in 2016, 2017, and only 16 between the years of 2019 and 2020. So data on community needs, issues, and problems. The County of San Diego Behavioral Health Services reported on data for the needs of this population. They serviced nearly 10,000 youth during the years of 2016 and 2017, and between the ages of 16 and 25, the largest being that of 16 and 17 years old. But clearly, as shown in this graph, there's still a high number of individuals past the age of 21 needing services for behavioral and mental health needs. Another issue that they were able to report on was mental health. For transition age youth, the three most common diagnoses for the year 2016-2017 were major depression disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenic disorder. And that was just the primary diagnosis. Additionally, about 25% of the youth serviced had a dual diagnosis of substance use disorder. Of that 25%, more than half of them were older than the age of 21, as clearly shown in our graphs here as well. Another data on the needs is employment. Although 34% of transition age youth were in school, only 9% reported that they had a competitive job, and an additional 9% were just saying that they were seeking employment overall. This still leaves a large gap between those who don't have employment or who have not been able to get employment. Of that 34% of youth that are going to school, 72% are made up from the age of 16 and 17 and 18 as well. The rest, 25%, is after 18, so clearly there's still a need for educational resources in order to succeed past, in getting your degree for after high school. There was also data on homelessness and being sheltered or unsheltered. The Voice of Youth Count reported on homelessness and unstable housing. 32% of the report that they got were sheltered. 36.1% of youth between 18 and 25 were unsheltered, and 11.7% were unstably housed. And then kids data reported for the year of 2020 that there was about 155 sheltered youth and then 260 unsheltered youth for the ages of 18 and 24. Additionally, youths that are in unstable housing and facing any issues of homelessness, they have higher chances of not completing their high school diplomas or getting higher education. Those between the ages of 18 and 25 years old, only 67.4% had a high school diploma or GED, which still leaves a fairly large number of those who didn't have it at all, which could then ultimately affect employment as well. As the ages between 18 and 25-year-olds, only 26.9 were employed. Additional data would be that, those who were between the ages of 18 and 25 years old, 28.9 were pregnant or a parent, as well as facing unstable housing issues. And 17.8% of those who were in foster care ever also had some record in the juvenile detention, jail, or prison as well. And now I'll pass it on to Elizabeth.
Thank you. So for my part, I will be talking about the target population needs. For the needs background research, I found Voices of Youth Count, which is a multi-component nationwide study program concentrated on the perspectives of runaway, homeless, and unstable young people. The aim of the Youth Count and Brief Youth Survey was to create an estimate of the size of the homeless and unstably housing youth in San Diego County, as well as to gather details about their characteristics and experiences. The data revealed that 42% of San Diego County homeless and unstably housed youth had either been in foster care or spent time in juvenile detention or jail or prison. And of those youth, 36.3% were 18 to 25-year-olds that had aged out of the foster care system. It was found that 51% of the homeless and unstably housed 16 to 24-year-olds in San Diego County were neither in school nor working. Next slide, please. So additional data that I found according to the Housing Inventory Annual Report for the City of San Diego. San Diego has been identified as one of the least affordable cities in the United States. Many San Diegans are finding it extremely challenging to afford a place to rent as the city's population increases and house prices increase as well. Nevertheless, the lack of affordable housing has been a significant problem for special needs populations, such as youth that are aging out of the foster care system. The average rent for a one-room apartment in San Diego County is $2,179, while the average minimum wage is $14 per hour. And according to the study that was mentioned in the previous slide, only 73 of the 271 18 to 25-year-old respondents that participated in the employment data collection survey had a job. Despite having a job, they do not make enough money to be able to pay such monthly rent, which makes it even more difficult for you to find and afford housing. Next slide, please. Okay, and so for the target populations, as previously mentioned, housing cost in San Diego County is extremely high, and housing affordability along with assistance programs to pay for rent are crucial in combating homelessness within youth that are aging out of foster care. Also, emergency and transitional shelters are high in demand. However, according to Voices of Youth Count, the only emergency shelter in San Diego County does not serve young youth age 18 and older, and most transitional living programs in San Diego County have a waiting list. Therefore, there is a significant need for increased capacity to provide youth age 18 and older with both emergency and long-term housing options. Furthermore, a growing body of literature suggests that in addition to meeting the basic human need for shelters, safe and stable housing, and need for funding to meet the educational needs of youth aging out of foster care system is necessary. Many young people aging out of foster care are not prepared for the transition to adulthood. A lack of education and employment could be a barrier both to finding and maintaining housing, to their well-being in other domains, and to their ability to participate productively in the economy. For those reasons, youth are in need of support for market relevant and employment services that can help them attain the skills required for acquiring and maintaining employment. Such support includes job readiness preparation, workforce development opportunities, a youth internship program, a pathway to college enrollment, or vocational training. Additional homeless foster youth are in need of funding assistance to help meet basic needs such as utilities, food, and transportation. Next slide, please. Okay, so I went ahead and interviewed a former foster youth and that experienced firsthand community responsiveness and unmet needs due to their age, race, gender, and sexual orientation. To maintain confidentiality, I will not be disclosing the name of the interviewee. The individual entered the foster care system when she was 4 years old and remained until she aged out. And she stated that her housing situation was never stable. Her family consisted of marginalized, oppressed people who didn't have access to good housing or stable income, and those who didn't suffer substance abuse. Okay, she faced housing, education, transportation, and food barriers. As she was aging out. In regards to the responsiveness of the community, she said that she did not receive a lot of community services. Next slide, please. So, for the oppressive conditions and discrimination, studies determined that between 20% and 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ, and among those young adults aged 18 to 25 have 2.2 times greater risk of homelessness than non-LGBT. Also, research indicates that LGBTQ youth face greater risk of homelessness as they age out of the foster care system. They are the subgroups within the homeless foster youth population that experience significant oppressive conditions and discrimination, starting with the rejection and lack of support from friends and family members, this being one of the leading causes to homelessness within this population. Additional causes to homeless among LGBTQ youth include stigma, mental health issues, barriers to employment and housing opportunities. Lastly, LGBTQ homeless youth report higher exposure to trauma, physical harm, discrimination, humiliation, and the exchange of sex for basic needs. So now Elisa will talk about task 3, assessing community assets.
Yes, so I'm doing task 3, assessing community assets. Next slide, please. So when assessing the community, it's important to look at their strengths, resilience, and also the resources available to them. And so for strengths, we saw themes that with or without resources, they have a theme of being independent. Many of them grew up only relying on themselves. And so this can be a strength of independence. Also, networking is a huge strength. Many of them create communities that is like a family to them, and also networking with resources available to them. Another one is determination. We saw that after they received resources, many of them accomplished goals of, finishing their high school degree, going on to college, and getting a lifetime career. And also with resources, they got the opportunity to understand financial importance Many of them do not have the financial safety net that families can bring, and so they understand that their financial moves are very important, because if they make a wrong move, unfortunately, they could end up becoming homeless. And so for resources, one of the big ones in San Diego is Just in Time, which is for ages 18 to 26. And they have different workshops and fundings on emergency / basic needs, housing, transportation, educational training, employment, networking, money management, and wellness and health. And so on the side, there are statistics from their annual surveys that they do with their clients. And we see that after Pathways, which is one of their workshops, 9 in 10 of the youth felt confident in their resume. We also see that after College Bound, 92% and higher agreed that they had the necessary resources to achieve their academic goals. They were optimistic that they could overcome academic barriers when they were presented. They were also confident in making their academic goals a reality. And in the last one, we see after Career Horizons, 9 in 10 of the youth agreed that they had established a network of relationships in order to thrive, which again, we see how important networking is. One of the other resources I found was Foster Youth to Independence, which is for ages 18 to 24. And this is a federal program, which is a 36-month rental assistance. So basically, the aging out community would pay 30% of the rent, and FYI would pay the rest. They did also have different workshops around like financial, like learning about finances, and also like career finding workshops as well. Next slide, please. And so when also looking at the community, it's important to look at the forces that affect the community. And many of my group members did a great job in emphasizing these different forces. And so homelessness, as we mentioned, is a huge one. San Diego population of homelessness, 12% of them are under the age of 24. And so we know that that is when many of the foster youth are aging out. Another one is involvement with criminal justice system. 40% of the foster youth have been arrested, so they do have involvement in the criminal justice system. Education is also a huge one. We learned that many of them do not graduate from high school. And as we see on the little graph, 3 to 6% of them graduate from college. And also early parenthood is another factor, which 50% of young women become pregnant by 19. We also see that 60% of them earn at or below $6,000 a year. 51% of them are unemployed within 2 to 3 years after leaving care. And then 41% of them are dependent on public assistance within 2 to 4 years. Next slide, please. And it's also important for us to look at their cultural values and beliefs. And so for the overall aging out population, we saw that there's similar themes and regarding values like self-sufficiency, success in labor, control and stability, and these kind of intertwine with one another. Many of them did not receive control or stability within their foster care system. And so we see that they can achieve these things by being self-sufficient and being successful in the labor market. I also, like Elizabeth, wanted to focus on the LGBTQ community, and we saw that their values, 2 of them being religious beliefs and identity, and these again intertwine with one another. Many of them did grow up in religious backgrounds, and so that was very hard for them to accept themselves and their sexuality and who they are and their identity. And so this plays a part in finding a place for them within their religion. And then 2 other ones are also safe spaces and representation. This is extremely important for transgender aging out population, and understanding that where they are receiving these resources and applying for jobs are safe spaces, and there is representation within their community with where they are receiving this aid. And then Sonia will be talking about the community structures and capacity. Next slide, please.
Okay, So I will be talking about Task 4, Assessing Community Structure and Capacity. Next slide, please. Okay, so I will be talking first about the service delivery units, and some of the formal and most known service delivery units within San Diego County are YMCA's Transition Age Youth, which is TAY, and it is a nonprofit organization. And then we have the County of San Diego Independence Living Skills Program, as well as the North County Regional Education Center, which are both public organizations. And some of the most mediating units established under grassroots associations are North County Lifeline's Life Spring House, Just in Time, and Casa de Amparo New Directions. These mediating units were founded by neighborhood residents, which is why they are under the mediating unit category. But they began as grassroots associations, but they could also be considered under formal units just because they became nonprofit organizations. And both of these formal and mediating units serve runaway, homeless, and street youth between the ages of 21 to 26. To qualify for these programs, youth must live in San Diego County and have plans to work or attend school. And they each help find safe, affordable housing. They provide transportation and home necessities such as furniture, hygiene utilities, and so forth. And so for the informal unit, the only type that I found was household units, which basically consist of former youth friends who experienced homelessness. So overall, both formal and mediating units do not exclude youth based on race, gender, disability, or religion. A difference in service delivery that can exclude some of these youth is their age, and I will talk about that more in my next slide. So next slide, please. Okay, so for patterns of influence, control, and service delivery, like I mentioned, the most common limit placed for foster youth is their age. Most of these delivery units offer services until the age of 25 or 26. Another limit as well is the funding. The extra community resources of control, which are our state and federal government funding, such as the AB 12, California Fostering Connections to Success Act of 2009, and federal grants established under the Housing Urban Development. They set this age limit and the amount of funding local communities such as North County Lifeline or Just in Time receives. So overall, our legislative government dictates the age and the funding for these delivery units. And within these units, resource distribution is influenced by citizens participating in the role of reviewing and commenting in committees, such as the Child Welfare Services Advisory and Work Groups, the North County Providers for TAY, North and Coastal Region, the County of San Diego Housing and Community Development Services, and campaigning for funding. And after speaking with some of these organizations, foster youth are able to participate in some of these committees, such as the North County Providers Meeting. And of course, due to COVID, most of this review process is now being done via Zoom. And lastly, citizens can donate and invest in these type of agencies. Next slide, please. Okay, so determining linkages between units. So foster youth who are low income, pregnant or parenting, homeless, unemployed, LGBTQ are represented in the linkages between units. For example, some of the established linkages between units are outpatient behavioral health programs, some substance abuse programs, the LGBTQ plus Pride program with North County Lifeline. And then we have other programs that refer for parenting skills development classes, life skills programs, employment and education assistance, and emergency necessities such as move-in expenses. These service units are connected in the sense that they serve the same population, purpose, and goals. So they communicate, coordinate, collaborate, and cooperate with one another For example, as previously mentioned, they have informal communication when all organizations meet for the North County providers for TAY and North and Coastal region. As for cooperating and coordinating, Casa de Amparo and YMCA TAY program work closely with the county's Independent Living Skills program. So county social workers meet with Casa de Amparo or TAY staff to coordinate youth living arrangement after they turn 21. And lastly, for collaboration, Just in Time has partnered up with Lifeline to create a program called The House, which is a drop-in center located in Vista where homeless youth can access resources and emergency financial assistance. Next slide, please. Okay, so when I was calling and researching these different type of agencies, I found out that their most common issue was assisting formerly incarcerated youth and finding housing for youth who suffer from severe mental health. These agencies mentioned there is a lack of linkages that work towards assisting these type of youth. Some of the agencies said for incarcerated youth, their chances automatically decrease to 50% when they have to go through background checks when applying for housing. There is no coordination between linkages within the child welfare system and the juvenile system, which is something that we need to help meet this change. And as for youth who suffer from severe mental health issues, these units do refer youth to a program called Catalyst, which is Catalyst who actually work with youth who serve severe mental health and housing, but the wait list is so long. So compared to youth with substance abuse who only wait weeks or days to get in outpatient, inpatient programs, youth with severe mental health can wait months or years to get in the Catalyst program for housing. So currently there's not a lot of linkages and programs established in San Diego County HHSA that serve in housing mental health delivery services for youth, which is another system that needs to coordinate and communicate in order to help meet this change and find a solution. As for opportunities for change, as moral agents, social workers have the ethical duty to participate in political activity. By voting and advocating, we can change the status quo in issues with funding, age limitation, and with the linkages mentioned that are needed for these youth. As regular civilians, we can donate and can also help create within our own neighborhoods informal units which are clearly missing in the service delivery arena. And lastly, and most importantly, is to have foster youth be at the center of, or be at the forefront of policy implementation as the actual representative of the target population we wish to serve. And next slide. All right, so that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed it.